If you're not living the life that you've always dreamt of, if you're not creating the life that you've always wanted, chances are it's because your creativity is blocked. And the number one thing that keeps creativity blocked is being in survival. If you are constantly in survival mode, there's no possible way that your nervous system can be regulated enough to allow your brain to think creatively, to think in certain ways that allow you to create consciously, design the life that you want. And so I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about why we're in survival mode. I want to talk about how to get out of it. And I want to talk about how that's going to shift things for you for creating the life that you've always wanted. Because, like I said, if you are not creating, it's because you're not creative, and creativity cannot be bred in survival. So that being said, you guys, it's your girl Elle, and let's just jump into it. Now, contrary to popular belief, you are not in survival mode because of the economy and because of inflation and because gas prices, food prices, and rent prices are extremely high, because there's war happening. Those things are not helping the situation. But the truth is you've been in survival long before that. And this is just making your survival mode worse. But the truth is the reason you're in survival mode is because of the unconscious choices that you make every moment of every day. And those choices you learned from your patterning very early on in childhood. And so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about where and why we're learning this in childhood. So one of the many reasons why a lot of us are programmed with a survival pattern or a damaged root chakra is because we lacked belonging and safety and connection with our caregivers and ourselves. That is the first and foremost. That is the first thread, the first breakage in our root chakra, and it's the first thread of patterning that begins, is a lack of connection and belonging and safety to our caregivers as well as to ourselves. We are the only species on this planet that when we come out the womb are 100% dependent on our caregivers. You look at deer and you look at elephants, when they're born, within 30 seconds, they're walking, they're feeding themselves, they're doing their own thing. Infants are different. Infants are completely dependent on their parental figure. Completely dependent on that. And so what do? We will do anything to make sure that we are safe and we belong and we're loved by those people. That's how we begin to survive. Now, unfortunately, in the pursuit of doing that, gaining the love, safety, and approval and belonging from our parental figures is when we begin to abandon ourselves and lose connection to ourselves. We begin to go against what it is that we want, we desire, what our soul and our hearts want. And we begin to abandon ourselves very, very, very young. And that self-abandonment becomes this deep-rooted distrust with ourselves. And this deep-rooted distrust with ourselves, unknowingly, we carry it out through our whole lives. We don't trust that we'll pick the right partners. We don't trust that we'll pick the right school, the right job, the right people in our lives. We won't trust that when we say we're going to go to bed on time or eat the right foods or go to the gym that we're going to listen. And again, it's funny because the reason we don't do those things either is because we're in survival. And our brains and our bodies are just doing the best that it absolutely can in each and every moment. And so this disconnection that we have with ourselves and this disconnection that we experience with our caregivers puts us in a deep-rooted, unconscious state of survival that, as we get older, develops and grows and grows and grows like a festering disease within our body. It grows and it takes form and it takes shape in a bigger way because we continue to make these unconscious choices. And what these unconscious choices oftentimes look like are people-pleasing techniques, right? Which are a very manipulative technique because people-pleasing keeps us safe, but it also allows us to manipulate the thoughts and actions of other people to keep us safe as well. So When we're in childhood, a lot of the time, what will happen is we become people pleasers. Got to walk on eggshells around dad because he's angry, maybe mom. We begin to please because we're receiving love and praise when we please our mom. Oh, you were such a good little boy, good little girl. And so we learn, oh, this is how I get love. This is how I get love. Let me be a people pleaser. And then when you get older, that people pleasing has you stuck in a job that you hate, has you stuck in a relationship that's abusive or that you hate. And so do you see how these patterns grow and fester like a disease as we get older? In early childhood, a lot of children, when they're experiencing big emotions, big feelings, are told to go to their rooms. When they do something wrong that they don't fully understand or comprehend, they're told to go to their room or they're punished. And what that does is it creates a separation between you and your caregiver, which, again, remember, you need to have that connection with your caregiver for survival. And so when you're forced to be in your room with those big emotions by yourself, what you're learning is that only you got your back. So what this festers and turns into when you get older is somebody who doesn't know how to ask for help. And boy, let me tell you, asking for help is a sign of somebody who is healthy and regulated and connected to others. And when you can ask for help and ask for support, it shows that you know how to receive that and you know how to not carry life's burdens on its own, thus creating space for you to create and to be creative and not be in survival. But we're taught at such a young age to be a lone wolf, to figure it out on your own, do it by yourself. And so do you see how that these things, these patterns that we learn very early on are disconnecting us not only from ourselves as we abandon ourselves to please others, and or when our caregivers abandon us by forcing us to figure out big, complicated emotions and problem solving things on our own, thus teaching us we've got to do it all on our own. These are deep survival mechanisms, thus constantly keeping our bodies and our minds in a state of survival. So then now you're a teenager and you've created all of these patterns and they've grown and they've festered and they've become a regular part of your identity, a regular part of who you are. And then you get into your 20s and then life hits you, all the adulting, paying bills, having a house, having a family. But the truth is you haven't actually addressed the fact that you're in survival. Because now, on top of that, you also have what you've been indoctrinated with in school, which is telling you, you got to go to school, you got to get an education, you got to have a family by a certain age. Society has convinced you that you need to act and be a certain way. And so now you've got those pressures. And you already don't have the capacity to be holding extra pressures because you've been in survival mode since you were a kid. And that's just the basic form. Those survival techniques in childhood are something that most everybody experiences. But what about the children who grew up in violent homes, sexually abusive homes? Oh, now you have a lot of survival mechanisms, a lot of survival tendencies living in your body that you then carry with you into adulthood and into your teen years. And all of this surviving energy of just trying to find belonging, connection, completely distracts you from enjoying life, experiencing life's pleasures, the happiness, the joy, the creativity, the playful nature. You have a really hard time tapping into that because you're so busy trying to find connection and belonging. But the thing is we need to learn that the connection and belonging we're really seeking is the one with ourselves and then the one with other, because both are so important. But so many of us are stuck in this survival because we are disconnected from ourselves. And we've never had healthy examples of what it means to be connected with other people. And so now you're wandering life completely disconnected from yourself, unable to trust yourself. You're completely wandering in life, unable to ask for help, unable to receive support, and holding all of life's burdens on your shoulders alone. God, that is heavy. It was never meant to be done alone. Never meant to be done alone. And I'm so sorry that you're having to feel like you've got to do this on your own. I'm so sorry that that's been your experience, that you've not been able to enjoy all the beauty that life has to offer and that life has just been a struggle for you. I am so sorry. And boy, do I know that. I grew up in a home full of addiction, abuse, trauma. And I spent many years perpetuating those patterns and those cycles with an abusive partner for 10 years, being an addict myself. It's hard. But I want you to know that there is a way out, that you can grow and evolve past that, that you can learn to come back home to yourself, that you can learn to have connections with others, and that you can have a thriving, healthy, regulated, grounded, stable life that just allows life force to creatively move through you so that you can consciously be creating the life that you desire. And so I'm going to list a few ways of how you can begin to get out of survival. The first, and probably arguably the most important, is that you have to choose to make different choices. You have to become aware of the choices you're making now, which means you have to get deeply vulnerable with yourself, extremely honest with yourself, and you have to take responsibility for everything that you have done and created in your life. And when I say take responsibility, what I'm meaning is, first and foremost, a lot of you watching this have probably experienced a lot of things in your life that were not your fault. You were probably hurt in ways, especially as a child, that you just didn't have control over. But as an adult, what you do have control over is how you choose to alchemize that pain, how you choose and what you choose to do with that, and the choices that you make to recover from that, heal from that, grow from that. You are in control of that. And so when I say we have to take responsibility for ourselves, we have to take responsibility for the fact that things in our life happen to us which had us think a certain way and then act a certain way. But it is our responsibility to change the way in which we think. So in order to get out of survival mode, you have to evaluate yourself. You have to begin to become aware of your thoughts and your actions and your patterns and the way in which you react to things and respond to things. And you have to begin to really look at yourself. And this is what shadow work is. This is what doing inner work is. And I'm going to link down below 2 free ebooks that I created for doing inner child work and shadow work so that you can begin this journey yourself. But that's uno numero one. To get out of survival mode, we need to begin to look and examine ourselves. And this isn't in a critical way or in a way in which we're shaming ourselves, but in a really curious way. Be curious. Why do I do this thing that I do? Why am I making these choices in my life? Why am I doing this? And what can I do differently? What do I want to do differently? What do I want my life to look like? So really beginning to examine yourself is first and foremost step 1 to getting yourself out of survival mode. Step 2 would be clearing out all the toxic people and situations in your life, cutting the fruit from the tree, getting rid of anything that you know damn well is toxic in your life. And this is going to be hard because for some of you, your only friend or the only person you feel you can lean on is probably a toxic person. And boy, do I know that. When I was getting off methamphetamine and hard drugs, and my only friends, which at the root of it were really good people, like really good people who truly loved me, and I felt I could lean on them, I had to cut them from my life because I knew where I was going, they could not come, leaving me completely alone. Yet was the greatest thing I could have ever done. Why? Because I had to learn to come back to myself. I had to learn to depend on myself. I had to learn how to take care of myself. I had to learn how to listen to myself. I had to learn how to stop abandoning myself. So number 2 would be taking toxic situations and people out of your life and eliminating that. Number 3 would be learning to kind of set boundaries with yourself and with other people. Setting boundaries with yourself might look like, if you say you're going to go to the gym, go to the gym. If you say you're going to meditate, meditate. If you say you're going to eat healthy, eat healthy. If you say you're not going to talk to that person, don't talk to that person. Keeping one small promise to yourself every day. One small promise. It can be so much as, I'm going to go for a 5-minute walk. I'm going to journal for 5 minutes. Whatever that small promise is to you, that is a boundary with yourself. Setting boundaries with other people. Number 4 would be start grieving. Start feeling the unfelt emotions in your body. Start learning to connect to your body. Start learning to locate sensations in your body. And I'm going to link a somatic meditation down below for you guys to do, so you can learn to start connecting to your body. It's a free somatic meditation. I'm going to link that below so that you guys can also learn to connect to your body, to begin to somatically go into your body. Number 5 would be starting to work on your nervous system. Beginning to understand what that is, how it works. Connecting to that so that you can begin to heal the trauma that lives within your body. Because trauma is not something that lives in the mind. Trauma is something that lives in the body. It lives in the fascia, in the tissue, and in the nervous system. And when we begin to feel things and move through things, yes, we begin to release trauma, but we also need to learn our capacity of what we can hold and what we can't hold. Do you ever find that maybe when you're in a triggering situation, you can feel the slow build? Maybe you're kind of calm at first, but then your heart starts to race, and you're noticing that you're starting to get angry, and the next thing you know, you're angry, or maybe you've completely checked out, you've zoned out. That's gauging where your capacity to hold is, and finding that, learning that, is learning your nervous system. That's going to be also extremely important on this journey of learning to get out of survival. Connecting with ourselves, learning to not abandon ourselves, is probably one of the most difficult journeys you'll all embark on, because it requires radical authenticity, radical honesty with self, radical honesty with others, and that is deeply vulnerable. It takes a lot of courage. Honoring boundaries with yourself to build that self-trust with yourself. That takes time, and let me tell you, if you've ever been in a relationship with somebody who's broken your trust, and you've been in that rebuilding process, and maybe they screw up just a little bit, and it feels like you just got to start all the way over. Yep, that's the same thing with yourself. The amount of times that I've built immense amounts of trust with myself only to mess up and have to feel like I've got to start over at the beginning. It's a process, it's a journey, and it takes time. You're not going to come out of survival mode overnight. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take the desire and willingness to do that. But I can promise you right now that when you begin to become conscious of yourself and how it is that you're showing up in the world and the things that you're unconsciously creating in your life, because the truth is when you're operating from this deep state of survival that you learned in your childhood, that are a part of your conditioning and your programming that lives within inside of your body through repetition and years of repetition, there's a reason why you're stuck at that job that doesn't pay enough. Because of those patterns, because of that survival energy that you're in. There's a reason you're in those shitty relationships and that you keep having them, because you're stuck in survival and in those patterns. There's a reason why you're struggling financially every month, and it's not because the cost and the price of things is too much. It's because you are making unconscious choices in your life that are keeping you stuck in survival. Everything in your external world is a reflection of what's happening internally to you. So if you're constantly battling survival internally, your external world is going to reflect that to you. I'm going to tell you right now, you guys, because me and my husband joke about it all the time. I have no idea how the hell in this economy we are doing thriving, and we don't even make objectively a lot of money every month. It's just life is taking care of us because we are both open to receiving help and support from other people. We have multiple streams of income, so we're not reliant on just one. We do things that bring us joy. We have a deeply intimate and connecting relationship. I would have never imagined this for myself 10 years ago when I began my journey, to be in a healthy relationship with a healthy support system, creating the life that I want to create, doing the things in my life that I want to do. It took me a long time. But I can tell you right now, we're not surviving. We are thriving in this economy, both working average jobs with multiple, little streams of income. We're doing just fine, and you can too. So what I'm experiencing in my external world, though, is a reflection of how much work I've done, how much work my husband has done. And so I want you to know that it is totally possible, but you have to want it. You have to want and be willing to go into the dark, hard places of taking a hard look at yourself and getting honest with yourself and taking responsibility for your life and choosing to make different choices. If you're not going to choose to make new choices, then you're never going to get out of survival. You have to choose differently. That's why I said that is the number one. You have to choose differently. First and foremost, make different choices. That includes doing things like shadow work, somatic work, setting boundaries with yourself and other people, letting go of toxic people, toxic situations, working on your nervous system. Choosing differently gives you a different life. You can't expect to change your life if you're just going to keep making the same choices. The same choices are leading you to the same place. In order to change, and in order to come out of survival mode, you have to be willing to make new choices, to become a new person. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're not willing to die, then you're not willing to change. Because in order to move forward in your life, the old version of you, you got to let that person go. You got to let that person die so a new version of you can be born. The new version of you who is thriving, the new version of you who takes care of themselves, who connects with themselves, who learns how to receive support and love from other people. The one who really is thriving. In order for that person to exist, you have to let the old version of you die. So, I'm wishing you all the best, all the luck, and don't forget to check down below for the free ebooks and guided meditations to help you connect deeper to yourself. That's all for today. Toodaloo.